Incredible revelation. 10 years after she saved him, he knocked on her door to transform her life. Jessica stood at the sink, scrubbing dishes with the same fervor she poured into every aspect of her life. The clock on the wall ticked ominously, echoing the 2 jobs that consumed her days and the quiet nights that inexplicably stretched out forever. She still remembered the fleeting applause she had received for saving Caleb, the wealthy boy who had once slipped beneath the surface of that pond. But now the whispers of neighbors carried the weight of derision. They saw her as another statistic, a single mother drowning in challenges. She dried her hands nervously, teeth clenched against the relentless pressure of their judgment. Every moment spent at work had become a meditation on sacrifice. The waitressing shift at Clara's diner, where the food was warm but the conversations often cold, and the late-night grocery shifts that stung with exhaustion. There was Ethan, her bright-eyed, thoughtful 12-year-old son, bubbling with dreams of college as she pinned her hopes on his future. Still, the looming questions of financial ruin often crept into her mind. What if she couldn't make ends meet? What if, after all the hard work, she couldn't afford to send him off to the world she had envisioned? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Suddenly, her daydreaming shattered. A knock at the door echoed through her modest apartment, reverberating in her chest like the sound of a gunshot on a quiet street. Who could it be? A growing nausea twisted in her stomach, her thoughts skittering between hope and dread. Was it the landlord, a neighbor with complaints, or something worse, someone reminding her of what she had lost and never could reach? With hesitant steps, she crossed the small living room, her breaths quickening as she opened the door. Caleb stood there, tall and framed by the fading light, a stranger yet achingly familiar. His breath caught when their eyes met, the memory of their past raw and flickering, an act of heroism long overshadowed by a decade of grinding reality. In one glimpse, Jessica felt both exposed and lifted, the weight of their history pressing upon her chest. But what surfaced was not just gratitude in Caleb's gaze. It was something deeper, a tantalizing possibility that made her heart race with trepidation. Could he really offer assistance? Would accepting his help signal failure on her part, shattering the identity she had fought?
So, salmon does have iron in it, but it's not a lot. There's better sources of iron. The rush of anxiety mounted, speeding up her heartbeat to an unbearable rhythm. She could not fall into the perception of being someone in need. She couldn't be defined by his offer. Yet, as Caleb began to speak, a wisdom in his words stirred an unsettling awareness of all she desperately wanted yet feared to accept. Something shifted within her. Old wounds and insecurities collided, creating a storm that threatened to overcome her. As the conversation unfolded, Jessica felt herself on the precipice, the future bursting with possibilities, yet swirling with the shadows of doubt. What would her decision mean for Ethan? Would he see her as a failure or a survivor? She felt trapped in the crossfire of self-reliance and vulnerability. And just as she steeled herself to respond, a knock reverberated through her small apartment. The sound of an impending change, echoing against the walls of her life. With Caleb waiting and tension mounting, everything hung in the balance of a fleeting moment, leaving the answers dangling in the air like a mirage, just out of reach. Jessica hesitated, her hand trembling on the doorknob. The voice inside her whispered urgent reminders of her independence, her resilience. Yet, staring into Caleb's earnest expression, she felt a part of her yearning for something more, something solid amid the unpredictability that had defined her life for so long. "Caleb, She started, but the words caught in her throat. What could she possibly say that wouldn't betray her deeply buried fears? The very idea of vulnerability seemed foreign and uncomfortable. She wrestled with the instinct to shut the door, to retreat into the safety of her carefully constructed solitude. "If you're here to offer help," she finally managed, her voice tinged with defensiveness, "I don't need it." The words hung between them, an electrified barrier of pride and stubbornness. Caleb searched her face, his brows furrowing. "I didn't come here just to help you financially. I want to help you in ways that matter, your happiness, your goals." The assertion both unnerved and intrigued her. Here was a man whose life had turned out rather differently, one who had risen from a near-fatal moment to become someone influential, while she felt tethered to a relentless grind. "Why now?" Jessica pressed, curiosity laced with suspicion. "Why not when I saved you?" He inhaled deeply, as if the answer hung heavy on his lungs. "I was a child then. I didn't grasp the weight of what you did, but I do now. I want to give back, to help you chase your dreams again." Her heart raced at the implication. Dreams. The word resonated deeply, yet felt like a cruel joke. Her dreams had long ago succumbed to the crush of necessity. They lay dormant beneath layers of obligation. "You don't understand what it means to live like this. I can't take risks. It's not just my life, it's Ethan's too." A flicker of understanding crossed Caleb's features. "Maybe taking control of your situation is a risk you need to embrace. You've been remarkable, Jessica. If anyone can help their circumstances, it's you." His faith in her sent a jolt through her, igniting something she thought had been extinguished, her ambitions, her desire to shape her own life. Was it truly possible that this stranger-turned-ally saw more in her than she could see in herself? She faced him, undeniably drawn to his unwavering belief. "What are you suggesting, exactly?" she asked, her tone shifting. She wanted to lift the veil on the hope threatening to bloom in her chest. "I'm starting a business project that values community input. I need someone with your intuition, someone who understands the grit of daily life, real-life struggles. You could be my partner, help create something that transforms lives, starting with your own." Jessica swallowed hard, her mind racing. Caleb was offering a door, a passage towards a new path, a way out of the shadows. Yet the reality of partnership also presented fears she had kept at bay. What if she failed? What if she stumbled and fell again? "Let me think about it," she replied, desperate to mask the tidal rush of emotions swirling inside her. "Just don't take too long," Caleb warned gently. "Life has a way of pushing us into corners if we don't take charge." As he turned to leave, each step echoed Jessica's internal conflict, her instincts still groaning against the independence she had fought to uphold, now warring with a deep-seated desire for something larger. And just as her heart began to settle, another knock reverberated through the small apartment, jolting her back into a reality fraught with uncertainty. Who was next at the door? What unforeseen challenge awaited her, further complicating the fragile resolve she had just mustered? With a racing pulse, she approached the door again, wondering if she was ready for whatever lay on the other side. Jessica inhaled sharply, her hand hovering over the doorknob as the knock resonated in her chest. Uncertainty clung to her like a shroud, and every second felt stretched by the weight of her choices. Who could possibly be at the door to challenge the fragile clarity she had just begun to glimpse? She could feel the decision sitting heavily on her shoulders, almost suffocating. Taking a deep breath, she opened the door. Her gaze fell upon a young woman, perhaps in her late 20s, clutching a thick folder of papers. Her nervous energy was palpable, underscored by the determination etched on her face. "Hi, I'm Zoe," she said quickly, her voice a touch too high-pitched. "I'm here for the job posting, the research assistant position." Jessica's instinct was to recoil, to shut the door tight and retreat to her muddled thoughts. But something deeper in her, a flicker of opportunity perhaps, made her pause.
I'm sorry, but I'm not hiring anyone." "Oh," Zoe bit her lip, disappointment surfacing in her dark eyes. "I saw your ad last week saying you were looking for help. I thought maybe I could pitch my skills?" Not wanting to fully close the door in the girl's face, Jessica leaned against the frame, curiosity piqued. "Skills? I have a degree in marketing and experience doing research for startups. I know how to analyze data trends and create effective outreach strategies. I just really want a chance to prove myself," Zoe said, her voice dropping into a more serious tone. "I don't have a lot of experience, but I'm willing to work hard." Jessica felt a flicker of recognition in Zoe's desperation. Hadn't she been standing in similar shoes not long ago, facing her own uncertainties? The heartache and the wild yearning for a chance. "In this economic climate, how can I even guarantee a stable future for you? I have my own issues." "But you're already thinking about starting something new," Zoe pressed gently, "aren't you? I saw your ad. You have a vision and a clear idea of what you want to create. Let me help you turn it into something tangible." Jessica shut her eyes for a moment, grappling with the walls she had built around herself. Here was someone ready to engage, offering not just to help, but to collaborate in shaping something larger than either of them. Yet lurking beneath the surface was fear. Fear of failure, fear of taking on a partner when she hadn't even embraced her own potential yet. "Let me think about it," she finally replied, echoing her earlier response to Caleb. Zoe nodded, though disappointment colored her expression. "That's all I ask. Everyone deserves a chance. If you change your mind, here's my number." She hurriedly scribbled her contact information on a scrap of paper and handed it over before stepping away. As Jessica watched Zoe leave, she felt the weight of the options coalescing around her, each with their own significance. This unexpected encounter illuminated her own internal struggles. She could hide, or she could step into the unknown, which felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Turning back into her apartment, the future loomed like a vast horizon, open and daunting. Connections were forming, the possibility to rebuild her life gaining traction. But with each step toward transformation came the nagging uncertainty. Could she really be the architect of her own destiny? Moments later, she heard her phone buzz, startling her out of her reverie. It was a text from Caleb, a simple line that tethered her doubts to fresh resolve. "Just remember, no vision is too big when you're willing to pursue it." The words hung in the air, challenging her to take the plunge. But could she meet the weight of such ambition? As she thought about her next move, a familiar surge of anxiety twisted inside her, urging her to retreat. She considered her life once more, the risks she had shunned for the sake of stability, and the path she had just been nudged toward. Jessica drew a deep breath, realizing that the coming days would ask not only for her choices, but a confrontation of her very identity. As she prepared to navigate these new dynamics, she felt an inkling of resolve. Yet in the back of her mind, dread lingered. Uncertainties always followed opportunity, and the coming challenge was not just about profession, it would pierce the very fabric of who she thought she was. What awaited her as she dared to embrace this dual opportunity? And could she finally step into the power of her own ambition without falling back into self-doubt? The next morning, sunlight seeped through the gaps in the curtains, penetrating the dimness of Jessica's apartment. She lay awake, thoughts colliding like pinballs in her mind. The weight of Zoe's proposal clung to her consciousness, a pressing reminder that opportunities often come disguised as challenges. What would it mean to accept help? She swung her legs off the bed, feeling the coolness of the floor against her feet. Routine, like a comforting blanket, beckoned her back to the familiar. Yet she was aware that the familiar was tethered to a past she was desperate to escape. The work she had been doing alone felt increasingly like treadmills, moving but going nowhere. She needed to elevate her thinking. She needed to evolve. Deciding to act constructively, she made coffee. The rhythmic sound of the brewing coffee mirrored a ticking clock, each beep reminding her of her indecision. As the steam curled upward, she imagined it carrying with it her fears of inadequacy and stagnation. She busied herself by fetching a notepad, a tiny burst of intention amidst the fog of uncertainty. Sifting through the jumble of her aspirations, she started drafting a list, a mind map of who she aspired to be versus who she currently was. The revelation was startling. She detailed her skills, strategic thinking, creativity, a penchant for problem solving, but anchored these talents to her limitations. Too often she had depended solely on herself, sealing herself off from potential allies out of fear of rejection or insufficiency. "What am I willing to give and receive in return?" she muttered aloud, the question hanging in the air like a challenge. She wrote it down, feeling the letters form a tiny manifesto. Above it, she scrawled the word collaboration with all the enthusiasm she could muster. The character seemed strange, almost foreign, yet intuitive as well. She knew that to forge ahead, she had to leave her fortress behind. Determined to follow through, she picked up her cell phone, her fingers hesitating as they hovered over Zoe's contact information, an unfamiliar territory indeed. After a moment's resistance, she pressed call. The initial ring felt heavy, dragging like lead. Just as she contemplated hanging up, Zoe answered, her voice bright and infused with energy. "Jessica, I've been thinking about your proposal," Jessica said, the words tumbling out before she could analyze the implications. "Would you like to meet?" "Absolutely, thank you." Zoe's enthusiasm spilled through the line, reverberating with Jessica's pulse. They agreed to meet at a local cafe, an enticing pathway to stepping through this door of opportunity. As Jessica hung up, anxiety mixed with excitement in an intoxicating blend. For the first time in a long while, she felt a shift in her perspective, an opening, almost divine in its timing. Clad in a gray cardigan that hugged her frame, she walked to the cafe, repeating a mantra in her head. "This is a partnership. I am not just handing over my dreams." As she reached the entrance, she saw Zoe already seated, her laptop open, prepping as though she had anticipated the meeting with the seriousness it deserved. This meeting marked a transition, but Jessica felt the old guard of apprehension clinging tightly. Yet there was no going back now. This was a first step. "Hey, I'm glad you're here," Zoe said, looking up with a bright smile that felt contagious. Jessica returned the smile, but her heart raced. Could they mesh their talents, her vision and Zoe's skill? As they dove into discussions, each question Zoe posed acted like a mirror, reflecting facets of Jessica's desires she had long since buried. The conversation moved from her vision for a new project into all the practicalities, igniting the embers of creativity that had lain dormant. Together, they started sketching out a roadmap, an outline for something tangible, something that resonated with both their aspirations. But as excitement swelled, an unsettling realization brushed against Jessica's consciousness. Could she truly relinquish control? The deeper question loomed. What if collaborating revealed she wasn't the visionary she hoped to be? Tension fused with innovation as they drained coffee cups and exchanged ideas. Jessica felt torn, drawn to the potential of what was unfolding while also gripped by skepticism. What if she couldn't sustain this change? What if she found herself knee-deep in failure again? Soon, they reached a pivotal crossroads in their dialogue. Zoe suggested a bold initial strategy that urged Jessica out of her comfort zone. It brought back a rush of familiar anxieties. Could collaborating push her too far too fast? With each suggestion from Zoe, Jessica faced a decision. "Let me think about it," she replied quietly, though determination seared through her doubt. Each word of hesitation was a reminder. The stakes were high. And beneath her composure, she wondered if her efforts would solidify into something more than abstract intent, or if they might crumble, the weight of her fears pulling everything down to earth yet again. As they wrapped up the meeting, the cafe filled with laughter and chatter, life pulsating around them like the very future that Jessica longed to embrace. But could she truly let herself take that leap? Another choice spun into existence as she assessed the implications hanging before her. Where would this partnership lead her? The moment of decision loomed, and dread rippled just beneath the surface. Would she embrace the possibility of transformed ambition, or retreat into the shadows of her own making? Jessica left the cafe feeling buoyed, yet the deep-rooted apprehension nipped
the edges of her exhilaration. The air felt heavier, laden with possibilities and the weight of her internal conflict. Her mind flickered with the images of blueprints, each one tracing the contours of ambition she yearned to claim but struggled to embrace. She had taken a bold step with Zoe, but now that she was outside the cozy confines of their discussion, doubt gnawed at her resolve. As she walked toward home, she replayed their conversation, dissecting Zoe's suggestions. Each insight was like a glimmer of light cutting through the fog of her insecurities. Could she really coordinate a project? Collaborate with someone whose enthusiasm challenged her established rhythms? The question buzzed in her head, both thrilling and terrifying. When she arrived home, she tossed her keys on the table, their sound echoing like the chime of a clock ticking toward an unknown hour. For the first time in ages, she felt the urge to pattern her aspirations into something concrete, a strategy. She opened her laptop, the familiar flicker of the screen igniting a spark inside her. She had plenty of ideas swirling in her mind, and they waited impatiently to be put into action. That night, she stayed up late, letting the caffeine and burger she had devoured spur her creativity. A digital canvas unfolded before her, revealing intricate plans and outlines. Cellular outlines of her dreams took form as she crafted a clear vision, a mission statement that bore the essence of her resolve. Words flowed faster than she could capture them. She was no longer just a spectator in her life, but a creator. Yet the hesitation lurked nearby, ready to snag her confidence. She needed structure to anchor her creativity, especially if they were to move forward with Zoe. Her mind raced with thoughts about clear deliverables, timelines, and the unshakable structure of accountability. The exhilarating thrill of her ambitions illuminated the path ahead, yet lurking in the background were the shadows of self-doubt. What if the ambitious courses she plotted turned out to be unfeasible? What if she failed to meet her own expectations? The cycle of questioning fed a tension she had yet to dispel, a duality between hopeful aspiration and paralyzing fear. The next morning, she awoke with renewed determination, though exhaustion tugged at her limbs. She conducted a rehearsal, a mock presentation, trying to anticipate every question Zoe might have. Every word shaped a part of her vision. Every pause felt important. It was essential that she mastered this narrative. At work, the mundane routines felt alien. The fluorescent lights no longer seemed bright enough to illuminate her path. Her soul yearned for the creativity that had ignited last night. Glancing at coworkers in the dull office sphere, Jessica felt out of place. Their conversations about deadlines and projects felt trivial when compared to the monumental endeavor she was about to embark on. "What are you doing this weekend?" one colleague asked, pulling her from her thoughts. "Nothing special," Jessica replied, but the words felt like a lie. She was on the brink of changing everything. The idea of sharing her burgeoning project felt simultaneously exhilarating and daunting. Confiding in anyone else would mean admitting the depth of her vulnerability, inching closer to exposing her fears of inadequacy. Later that afternoon, she was ensconced in her thoughts when her phone buzzed. A message from Zoe flashed on her screen. "Hey, just wanted to check in and see how you're feeling about our plans. Any thoughts?" The message poured icy water over the embers of her inspiration. Should she reveal the extent of her visions, expose herself to potential critique? Or should she stay cautious, treading lightly until she knew her footing? As tension mounted, shaking away her earlier bravado, her fingers hovered above the keyboard. In a moment of impulse, tempered by fear, she typed back, "I've been reflecting on our last meeting. Would it be possible to have a brainstorming session to refine our strategy?" As she pressed send, a ripple of anticipation coursed through her veins.
Each minute that passed felt heavier, the weight of her choice to involve Zoe pressing upon her shoulders. Would this lead to a partnership that flourished from her vision, or was it a leap into an abyss? The unresolved question lingered, stirring both hope and dread. Just as she wrestled with the ambiguity, anticipation flashed within her. Perhaps this collaboration could either bolster her ambitions or mirror her fears back in painful clarity. Either way, she could no longer tiptoe around her ambitions. The defining moment was approaching. Would she forge ahead or retreat? The answer was coming soon. The tension settled, and within it lay the greatest revelation yet. The next step might not just be her professional development, but a profound transformation of self. Just as she was beginning to see the contours of her path, a flicker of doubt crept back. What if this partnership blurred her own identity? What would she truly become by the time they were done? The next morning, Jessica woke to the harsh glare of sunlight streaming through her window, a stark contrast to the murky depths of her thoughts. She rubbed her eyes, her heart beating faster with an amalgam of anticipation and anxiety. Today was the day she would meet Zoe again. The finality of that realization pushed her out of bed, her limbs buzzing with both adrenaline and dread. As she prepared for the meeting, she dressed with intention, choosing a crisp blazer that reflected her burgeoning ambition. It was no longer just fabric draping her body. It was armor, protecting her from the vulnerability that threatened to consume her. She practiced her cadence in the mirror, dissecting the subtleties of her delivery. Would her voice convey confidence, or would it betray her trepidation? Time stretched languidly as she navigated the metropolis toward their rendezvous. Each step toward the cafe felt like a countdown, the city's heartbeat synchronized with her own pounding pulse. The crowd billowed around her, each face a blurred counterpart to her solitary realization. This was her moment. She paused at a crosswalk, catching her reflection in the glass of a nearby storefront. Who was this woman setting out to collaborate? Who would she be after this exchange? When she entered the cafe, Zoe was already seated at their usual corner table, absorbed in her notes, a vibrant contrast to her own anxious disposition. "You look ready," Zoe greeted, her smile warm but her brow creased with focus. Instead of responding with her usual banter, Jessica took a deep, centering breath. "Thanks. I've been thinking a lot since our last discussion." As she settled into the chair opposite Zoe, she felt the weight of expectations, both her own and those projected by her partner. "Great! I can't wait to hear what you've come up with." Zoe leaned forward, her enthusiasm palpable, prompting Jessica to share the plans she had meticulously crafted during sleepless nights. This was it, the time to transform her strategy into substance. Words poured out like a rushing river as Jessica unveiled her ideas. She spoke of timelines, achievable deliverables, and the structures that would underpin their ambitions, signs of her growth unfolding in real time. Zoe's eyes sparkled, a reflection of what Jessica had only just dared to envision. The energy between them shifted, morphing from mere potential to a palpable kinetic force. "Wow, this is fantastic!" Zoe exclaimed, her excitement infectious. The validation struck a chord deep within Jessica, lifting a portion of the weight that had clung to her heart since she'd reached out. But then the flickering shadow of fear crept back in. "What if my vision is too ambitious?" Jessica's voice wavered as her thoughts spiraled. "What if we hit an impasse and I let you down?" Zoe placed a reassuring hand on Jessica's. "Jessica, this isn't just about you or me. We're creating something together. It's okay to explore the edges of ambition. That's where creativity lies." Beneath Zoe's words, Jessica felt a surge of determination, but also reluctance. Was she truly ready to embrace this partnership if it meant exposing her every vulnerability? What if letting this new side of herself flourish came at the cost of losing who she once was? They spent the next hour blending ideas, challenging each other, and refining their vision together. A camaraderie formed, a tapestry stitched from shared dreams, ambitions, and, yes, fears. As the meeting drew to a close, Jessica felt a strange mix of exhilaration and uncertainty. The thrill of collaboration coursed through her, yet the underlying tension refused to dissipate completely. "Let's meet again next week and kick things off," Zoe suggested, oblivious to Jessica's internal conflict. "Definitely," Jessica replied, trying to mask her apprehension. When she stepped outside into the sunlight, a new clarity washed over her. She realized that today wasn't merely about partnership, it was a confrontation with her own limits. But as she walked down the bustling street, a knot of uncertainty tightened in her chest. With each step, doubt began to creep in again. What would happen if she faltered? That was the moment she paused, realizing that her journey had just begun, and the greatest test lay ahead. Behind the thrill of a partnership and the excitement of creativity lingered the risk of revealing her true self. Would this endeavor bolster her spirit, or would it compromise her essence? The thought tied her stomach in knots, a reflection of the tumultuous path ahead. Just as she rounded the corner, a grim thought breached her mind. Perhaps the depth of her transformation was more profound than she had anticipated. Would she be able to navigate the shifting seas of identity, or would she drown in expectations? Jessica's fingers tightened around her bag as she quickened her pace, the question echoing in her mind like a relentless pulse. How much of herself would she need to give up to achieve her dreams? Jessica's first night after the meeting was restless. The ceiling loomed above her like a judgment, each crack a reminder of her uncertainties. She tossed and turned, the silence of her apartment amplifying the chaos in her head. What had seemed like a celebration of ambition in the cafe now transformed into a looming specter of doubt. Each scenario of failure played out like a scene from a haunting drama. It was early morning when she reluctantly allowed the sunlight to pierce her bubble of exhaustion. Rising from the bed felt weightier. She confronted herself in the mirror again, and that armor, the crisp blazer, was still draped over her chair, yet its promise felt distant. Could she bring the vision she shared with Zoe to life? Driven by an impulse to ground herself, Jessica decided to take a walk. The city outside buzzed with activity, people flowing like water through the streets. They were on their own quests, blissfully unaware of her internal turmoil. Yet, mingled in the ebb and flow was a seed of inspiration. Each passing moment whispered the potential of triumph. Beneath her feet, the ground hummed with energy not yet tapped. The decision to turn her doubts into action settled on her like a calling. She needed clarity, not just about her project with Zoe, but about herself. She ventured to a local bookstore she frequented, seeking refuge among the comforting smell of pages and possibility. The aisles wrapped around her, an embrace of solace. Each book held a story, a testament of individuals overcoming odds, stakes high and personal. She stumbled upon a section that radiated with purpose, personal development. The title of one book, Unleashing Your Potential, caught her eye. With a deep inhale, she picked it up. It was time for her to confront her hidden competencies, to reclaim her belief in her abilities. This text felt like a lifeline thrown into the tumultuous sea of her doubts. Later that evening, the book lay open on her dining table, her pen dancing in the margins. She jotted down insights. Each chapter stirred something within her, challenging her to reevaluate her limits. As the sun dipped below the horizon, an idea emerged. What if she paired the aspirations of their project with something deeply personal? Jessica recognized that her anxiety stemmed from a fear of complacency. It was more than mere ambition. It was about harnessing her identity, refusing to dilute it for the sake of collaboration. A strategy took shape. She would incorporate elements of herself into their work, her storytelling, her ability to connect modern themes with emotion. It would not erase who she was, but elevate it. Energized by the revelation, she penned her thoughts down as the ink flowed like blood through the pages. This was no longer a mere professional endeavor. It had the potential to be an exploration of her artistic self, a blend of both worlds emerging with new clarity. As she prepared for the next meeting with Zoe, excitement buzzed beneath her skin, intermixed with residual nerves. She realized that she was moving toward a different kind of fear, one that didn't paralyze but propelled her forward. Still, the stakes felt high. What if her blend of the personal was rejected? Would she risk that vulnerability to be seen? As dawn broke on the day of their next meeting, Jessica donned her blazer again, a little less armor and a little more skin. She had not only revised her strategies, but had pivoted her entire approach, infusing it with her true essence. Today was the day she would unveil this newfound synergy. Her professional ambitions merged authentically with her creative spirit. As she stepped out, heart racing in anticipation, she halted just outside her apartment door. The question nagged at her. Would this bold new direction be embraced, or were some facets of her identity still too fragile to expose? The thrill of the unknown intertwined with a lingering fear, compelling her down the path that lay ahead. With every step forward, she felt the weight of decision lean heavily on her. This meeting would be a litmus test, and for the first time in a long while, she felt ready to embrace the outcome, whatever it may be. What awaited her on the other side of that door, and would it validate her leap or shatter her emerging confidence? As Jessica stepped out into the crisp morning air, her heart thrummed with a blend of anxiety and determination. The city around her pulsed with vitality, yet each passing face felt like a stranger, wrapped up in their own narratives while she teetered on the edge of a transformative chapter. Today marked her debut that was as much about personal revelation as it was about professional collaboration. The coffee shop where she and Zoe had agreed to meet stood stark against the backdrop of the rising sun. It had served as a sanctuary before, but now it felt like a stage, a place where Jessica would reveal her interpretation of their shared vision. As she entered, she visualized her words taking shape. As she entered, the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee enveloped her like a warm embrace, yet the atmosphere buzzed with tension. She spotted Zoe already seated at their usual table, scrolling through her notes, the familiar intensity shadowing her features. Jessica took a moment to gather her thoughts. This was her opportunity to intertwine her essence with the project. "Hey, Jessica." Zoe looked up, her voice cutting through the din. "Excited to see what you've got for us today." "Thanks, Zoe. I'm excited too," Jessica replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Her pulse quickened as she slid into the chair, their table almost feeling like a battleground where her deepest vulnerabilities would be on display. As they exchanged pleasantries, Jessica's mind buzzed with her grand revelation. Instead of diving straight into her ideas, she hesitated, her stomach churning. Would Zoe understand the intricacies of her vision when it merged storytelling and authenticity? "So, I've been reflecting on our project," she finally began, her voice firm yet threaded with uncertainty. "What if we embraced the idea that influences our generation? Stories of real transformation, stories that are personal." Zoe cocked her head, intrigue apparent in her eyes. "You mean blend in personal elements, like testimonials intertwined with our themes?" "Exactly," Jessica's voice resonated with excitement. "What if we focus on individual experiences to illustrate broader truths? My experiences can bridge connections." Zoe leaned back, contemplation deepening her expression. "The success of this depends on vulnerability. Are you prepared for that? Being exposed isn't always comfortable." Jessica felt the weight of Zoe's question. Exposing her personal stories could invite scrutiny, but they also held the power to resonate. "I think there's strength in that vulnerability. I want to lead with authenticity." Zoe studied her carefully, as if weighing the impact of Jessica's commitment against the potential risks. "That's a bold strategy, Jessica. I like it. But we have to ensure your experiences reflect a universal message, not just a singular view."
The dialogue sparked a fierce internal debate within Jessica. She recognized the risk, but also sensed an indelible truth beneath her fear. Did she believe that her narrative could shape the community experience? She nodded slowly. "Let's try," she found herself saying, the chorus of her belief forging momentum. "Let's explore the intersection of personal and collective narratives." As they brainstormed, Jessica felt a subtle shift. Their energy ebbing and flowing, the room became a cocoon of possibilities and innovations. The synergy between her and Zoe sparked a fire within Jessica, illuminating the dormant passions she had buried beneath layers of self-doubt. They exchanged ideas, weaving Jessica's personal anecdotes with Zoe's analytical insights, a palpable excitement building. As their conversation deepened, Jessica could feel her confidence blooming, transforming her trepidation into fervor. The bold direction she had proposed wasn't just a shot in the dark. It was the very essence of who she was finally emerging into the light. Minutes stretched into hours, and with each passing moment, her vision crystallized into something tangible. She realized that her transition from fear to empowerment ignited a newfound aspiration. This was more than a project, it was a chance to be wholly present in her artistry. Yet, as they reached a productive lull, Zoe's expression shifted slightly. "I admire your passion, Jess, but just one last thing." Her eyes narrowed. "What if we encounter resistance from the team? Will you be okay with that?" The question loomed heavy. Jessica's resolve was stable, but the vulnerability of facing potential criticism struck her like an icy slap. Was she truly ready to unveil her heart? As she contemplated this new battlefield ahead, Jessica felt a prickling of uncertainty. Could her deeply personal revelations withstand scrutiny from those she had yet to persuade? As she weighed the risks and rewards, the thrill of the unknown electrified her being. And nestled within that tension was the most gnawing question of all. Could she turn her dreams into a reality, or would her newly forged confidence falter when pushed to its limits? Jessica sat back in her chair, the gravity of Zoe's question echoing in her mind. The room, once a vibrant cocoon of creativity, suddenly felt stifling. Each whisper and clatter seemed to amplify her apprehension. Would the team truly embrace her vision? The thought was unsettling, but beneath that fear lay an ember of conviction. She glanced at Zoe, who was now studying her intently. "I need to be ready," Jessica murmured, almost to herself. It wasn't just the project hanging in the balance. It felt like her very identity hinged on this. "Okay," Zoe replied, breaking Jessica's reverie. "Let's explore how we can present your ideas to the team. We need to frame it in a way that highlights the strength of personal stories without diminishing the collaborative aspect." Jessica felt a flicker of hope. Zoe was on her side, guiding her through the complexities of their venture. "What are the key experiences you think will resonate most?" Jessica paused, reflecting on her journey. There were stories of growth, of loss, of love, moments that reshaped her perspective. Her heart thrummed at the thought. "I think I should share my experience of moving to this city, how that leap pushed me into adulthood. I faced so many challenges alone. It felt like every setback was a lesson in resilience. People might relate to that." Zoe nodded, her fingers poised above her notepad. "That sounds like a solid foundation. It's relatable, and it sets the stage for your deeper insights about community and connection." Excitement coursed through Jessica's veins. The fear was being coupled with purpose. Together, they began to map out the framework of their presentation, intertwining Jessica's personal anecdotes with Zoe's structured analysis. As they worked, Jessica was flooded with moments from her past, each one a thread in the narrative they were weaving. Yet, beneath the exhilaration was a quieter, more uncomfortable voice, one that questioned her readiness to put that pain into the world. Could she bear the weight of vulnerability? Could she stand by her truth, even if it invited skepticism? The clock struck noon, disrupting the rhythm of their brainstorming session.
Zoe stretched her arms before her, a satisfied smile on her face. "I think we're nearly there, Jess, but I want you to think about this. What about the moments that still weigh on you? The ones you may not want to share, but could create the most impact?" Jessica's stomach twisted at the suggestion. There were events she had tucked away, memories that still breathed regret. Each of those experiences felt like a double-edged sword, holding potential for connection, but with a risk of exposing her insecurities. Those moments, they're raw. I'm worried they may come off as weaknesses rather than strengths. Only if you present them that way. But remember, vulnerability breeds empathy. Zoe leaned in, her eyes gleaming with encouragement. This isn't just about you facing criticism. It's about creating a strong foundation for others to share their stories. A mix of fear and clarity washed over Jessica. It was true, she had faced judgment before, but what she had not yet fully embraced was her own narrative as a powerful tool for change. "I can do this," she asserted softly, a newfound determination swelling within her. Zoe clasped her hands together, a spark of excitement lighting her features. "Yes, and together we'll navigate all feedback, good and bad. Remember, we're in this together." With the foundation laid, Jessica felt the volcanic pressure of her insecurities subsiding, but fresh questions unfurled in her mind. Who on the team would challenge her the most? Would any dissent force her back into silence? As they wrapped up, Jessica's heart raced at the thought of their upcoming presentation. She could gradually see the layers of her past begin to emerge, beckoning her into a deeper engagement than she had ever anticipated. But the road ahead was still fraught with uncertainty. And in that critical moment, one overwhelming thought struck her. What if her truths were met with skepticism and dismantled her ambition? Jessica took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. Soon, she would have to confront not only the team, but also the darkest corners of her past. Standing on the precipice of change, she prepared to embrace the vulnerabilities that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. Smoke from the coffee machines blended with the faint hum of conversation swirling around her, encasing her in a bubble of possibility. The presentation loomed closer, each day etching new lines of worry on her resolve. Would her heart withstand the scrutiny? The moment she would face her team was drawing near, and nothing would prepare her for the revelations that awaited. As the day of the presentation dawned, Jessica stood before the bathroom mirror, eyes focused intently on her reflection. The crisp blazer she wore carried an air of authority she had meticulously cultivated. Yet deep down, uncertainty rippled
beneath her composed exterior. Today was no ordinary day. It was a culmination of every fear she had faced over the years. A moment of reckoning, not just for her project, but for her very identity. She reflected on the journey that had led her here. Months filled with doubt, breakthroughs, and the budding partnership with Zoe. It was time to embrace the very elements of vulnerability she had once shunned. Today, she would unveil her truth and invite others to gather around her narrative. But could she truly stand in front of her colleagues and share her most intimate struggles, the very stories that kept her awake at night? While she donned her blazer, Jessica recalled the countless moments when fear had threatened to paralyze her. From her struggles as a single mother to the days of juggling 2 jobs, she had walked a tightrope of survival and sacrifice, always unanswered. But now, as she stood on the threshold of a defining moment, she felt an unmistakable shift within herself. No longer would she allow fear to dictate her path. The coffee shop they had worked in was transformed in her mind into a bastion of hope and ambition. As she stepped into the conference room, her heart surged with an invigorating mix of resolve and anxiety. She found Zoe waiting, enthusiasm radiating off her presence. "You've got this, Jess," Zoe said, a genuine smile lighting up her face. It felt as if the tide was turning in their favor. As they entered the room, the familiar faces of their colleagues stared back, some ready to critique, others eager to support.
The air crackled with anticipation as presentations began, but Jessica felt anchored by the realization of her own strength. When it was finally their turn, Jessica took a deep breath, centering herself. She and Zoe walked to the front, the dynamic between them palpable. Zoe expertly articulated their project's goals and objectives, but Jessica knew the moment was hers. As she stepped forward, she felt like a tightrope walker, poised above an audience teetering between judgment and acceptance. Their faces blurred into one mass as her heart pounded in her ears, but she focused on what mattered, her truth. She began by detailing her personal journey, a narrative of struggles, resilience, and ultimately transformation. "I know what it feels like to navigate the burden of expectations," she began, her voice steady, "to feel as though you're suffocating under the weight of doubt. But I also know that within those struggles lies the potential for growth." Jessica articulated not just facts, but emotions, vivid memories that cemented her humanity. Breathing deeply, she spoke of her son Ethan, how he inspired her to break free from stagnation. She realized that in sharing these moments, she wasn't merely cataloging weaknesses. She was creating connections, weaving empathy through her vulnerabilities. The room grew quiet, and she could sense the shift, an engagement forged from genuine interest and budding respect. One story after another spilled from her lips.
Finally, she approached the pivotal topic of collaboration, echoing the partnership she had built with Zoe. This project is not solely about its success. It's about embracing the messy, intricate weave of our individual stories to create something larger than ourselves. When she finished, the applause that erupted was palpable, a collective acknowledgement of her bravery. She looked at Zoe, who beamed with pride, their shared journey palpable in that moment. Their project, once an abstract idea, had transformed into a compelling vision. As questions followed, Jessica felt buoyed by support rather than scrutiny. Her colleagues probed not to challenge, but to enhance the potential tapestry they were crafting together. Each query brought new layers of richness to their project, and instead of anxiety, Jessica felt empowerment coursing through her veins. Stepping out of the conference room, pulse racing, Jessica turned to Zoe. "I did it! I shared my story." The weight that had lingered on her shoulders dissipated, a newfound lightness enveloping her. "Of course you did," Zoe replied. "You found your voice. This is just the beginning." In that instant, Jessica realized she had manifested not only a professional accomplishment, but a personal awakening. She had conquered the internal battle, shedding layers of self-doubt that had bound her for so long. Moving through the rest of the day, she carried herself with newfound confidence. Recognition from her peers reinforced her determination to pursue each avenue of opportunity before her. It was not about the praise, it was about the validation of her strength and insight. As the sunset bathed the city in golden light, Jessica stood at her apartment window, observing the bustling street below. Her heart swelled with a sense of contentment she had never known, a deep-seated fulfillment rooted in authenticity. The pieces of her life began to align. She had not only become the architect of her destiny, but also learned that vulnerability is strength, an inquiry that invites others to join the dialogue of personal empowerment. Jessica had stepped onto the platform of transformation, ready to take her life back. She had proved to herself that she was capable of sewing the threads of ambition into her narrative, one bold step at a time. The next chapter awaited her embrace, and as she faced the horizon, she knew with unwavering confidence she was ready. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now, and don't wait even one more second. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.